In this video I'll be running through step by step how to configure your flight stick or joystick for helicopters. We'll cover all the basics and in less than 20 minutes we'll get you up in the air. If you're unfamiliar with helicopter terminology, then check out this video link in the notes below for more information. Welcome to the SimHanger, my name's Mark, thank you very much for watching and let's get started. First things first, select a suitable helicopter. I recommend something basic like the Cabri G2. That's what I'm using in this video today. And then spawn at an airport or helipad of your choice. We're ready now, so hit escape on the keyboard. From the menu, select settings and then controls. Make sure your keyboard is set for 2024 transversal as it makes editing easier. This config guide is adaptable for any joystick. Today I'm using the Velocity 1 flight stick on the PC. If you're on Xbox, not a problem. The same mappings and bindings apply, just axes and button numbers may be different. Now the Turtle Beach Velocity 1 flight stick already has a helicopter config, which is not bad to be fair, but today we're going to start with a blank canvas and build from scratch. Under Helicopter Profiles, change the active to none, then select the Tools icon, then select Duplicate. And here you'll be given the opportunity to name your config. And because we're duplicating the none profile, it will be empty, which is exactly what we want. I'm going to call mine default heli, hit OK, and that'll now display as the default profile under helicopter controls. However, if we go down and change the filters from none to assigned, we'll see that there's already assignments in there. That is because they're falling under the general controls, as they relate mainly to camera. There's no none profile here for these, but no problem, we can quickly delete these assignments. Move the mouse over the top item till it's highlighted, and then press the backspace key. Once again, it'll prompt us to give it a name. Go ahead and give it a name, anything you like. I'm going to use the same name as I had for the helicopter controls so that they match up, and in the future will be easier to find. Remember, we've made a duplicate because we can't delete the default profiles. Once again, move the mouse over the top item till it's highlighted. If it doesn't highlight, click on the description. And now, pressing backspace multiple times, we're able to delete all entries. We're nearly there now, and they're all gone. Just give it a moment to catch up. It is a little bit on the slow side. With both our helicopter controls and general controls on our new profile and the filter on assigned, well, it should be blank, which it is. After checking both our new profiles are active, change the filter to none or all, then in the search box type set cyclic. A flight stick in a helicopter is called a cyclic. And here we have two options, longitudinal axis, which is pitch, and lateral axis, which is roll. We'll set longitudinal axis first, click in the box to make it start scanning, and then push the joystick forward. Now to set the lateral axis, click in the box and move the joystick to the side. We now have both pitch and roll. If you're using rudder pedals, you can ignore this part, but most joysticks have a twist axis, which in an aircraft is our rudder. In a helicopter, it's our tail rotor. So back up to the search box and type in tail. Number of options will come up, and what we're looking for is tail rotor axis. There it is, you know what to do, click in the box and twist the joystick. And that's now done. The key to flying a helicopter is trim. And you'll need to use trim a lot more than what you would in a normal aircraft. And it's key to control. So let's configure in some trim, and in the top search box type in rotor. And here we'll want both longitudinal or pitch trim as well as roll or lateral trim. Without these you can't fly a helicopter successfully. We'll start with our longitudinal trim, increases pitch up and decreases pitch down. I strongly recommend that you do not use a trim wheel for this action, but buttons. Trim wheels will make the movement far too aggressive and you'll lose control. On my joystick I've got a 4-way hat switch, which is going to be perfect for trim, and I'm going to configure it to that. To increase longitudinal trim, I'm going to press the hat switch down. Now I'm going to select decrease longitudinal trim and I'm going to press it up. That's done, and now we want to do our lateral trim. And we're looking for increase and decrease rotor lateral trim. There it is. Increase, click in the box, and I'm going to press the hat switch to the right. And for decrease, I'm going to press it to the left. We'll have a quick demonstration a little bit later on of the trim in action. And whilst we're here on the page, although not related to trim, there's another very useful function, that's toggle rotor brake. I'm going to set that to one of the buttons. You apply the rotor brake once you've landed, and I'm going to set it to one of the right-hand buttons, as I won't need it when I'm flying and it'll be hard to get to, because I'm right-handed. I've set it to the top button, joystick button 5. I'm keeping the buttons with easier access to for things I might need during flight. Helicopters have a throttle and this is bound to the collective. So back up to the search bar and type in collective. And we're looking for collective axis. There it is. My joystick has an axis on it, so I'm going to use that. If you're using a HOTAS type setup, you would bind this to your throttle. Click in the box, move the axis, and it's recorded. Now here's something that's optional. The collective, when bound to the throttle, is lifted up to increase power. Therefore, fully forward would be idle. So on my joystick as it is now, it would be at idle, and when pulled fully towards you, would be at max power. Completely opposite to how a throttle works in an aircraft. You can of course leave it like this is more authentic, but I get confused, so I'm going to invert the axis. So idle is with the lever pushed fully back. To do that, select the tool icon, and from the menu we can see set invert axis. Make sure that that's ticked. Then we're done. As I mentioned, this is purely optional. Now the Cabri G2 doesn't have gear, it has skids, but I want to use the same profile for multiple helicopters. So I'm going to set gear with the filter on all. I'm going to type in the search box gear, and here you can set it to toggle gear up or down. On my joystick I'm going to set it to 2 buttons, which are actually the detents at either end on the second axis on the joystick. I'm going to use these detents for gear up and gear down. First of all, for gear down, into the detent and back out again. I'm going to do exactly the reverse for gear up. I'm going to push the joystick all the way forward just before the detent, then scan and push it into the detent and back out again. You could set it to 1 button for toggle or set it to 2 buttons, whatever was your preference. This current setup just suits this particular joystick. We're getting there now. Let's clear the search box, and this time we're going to search in toggle engine. And we're looking for toggle engine governor switch. There it is, right at the bottom there. This links the collective to the throttle. Don't really need it for the Cabri, but you may need it for other helicopters. So once again, I'm going to allocate it to a left-hand switch. Normally it's on by default anyway, and I've set it to button number 6. Another optional configuration which you may find useful is on the trim. Let's head back to trim by typing in trim. And what we're looking for here is quick trim. You should find it about halfway down. This is something not available in a real helicopter, but is an aid to you when you're learning to fly. Once again, I'm setting it to a button on the joystick. If you use it, it will try and automatically trim the aircraft. Can help you get out of trouble at times. This next configuration, once again, is purely optional. Filter on all, and in the search box type in CFD, which stands for Computational Fluid Dynamics. Once again, I'm going to set this to a right-hand button on my flight stick. We'll have a look at this in action, but what it does is give you a visual display of the movement of the air around the helicopter. If nothing else, it can be good fun to see it in action. Let's configure the last of the buttons, clear the search box. From the menu, we're picking up autopilot. There's a number of categories displayed here. The one we're looking for initially is general, so click on that. And the item that we're looking for is toggle autopilot master to turn our autopilot on and off. I'm going to configure this to one of the left-hand buttons so that I have easy access to it. So A on my flight stick is autopilot. Next, I'm going to heading, and I want to select toggle autopilot heading hold, and I'm going to set that to the B button, joystick button 2. Next, we want to head to altitude, and here we're going to be looking for toggle autopilot altitude hold. Make sure you select altitude and not attitude. That'll go to X on my flight stick. And lastly, I'm going to look for the heading nav. It's the Y key on my flight stick, and I'm going to set that to Autopilot Nav1 Hold. And now I have all the necessary basics for autopilot on the flight stick itself. Very handy. You could, of course, if you have a separate throttle quadrant, allocated it to buttons on that. That's our configuration finished in terms of controls to fly the aircraft. Let's now finish off with some camera controls. Once again, a whole range of categories on offer. We're going to choose camera mode switches. We need to switch between cockpit and external view. You'll note my flight stick has a trim wheel. I'm not using that, but it also functions as a button. So if I press it, I can go to the external view and back again. I'm using that. You can configure that to any button that you want. And optionally, if you want to go to the drone camera as well, once again, I'm going to set that to a button on my joystick. In this case, it's button 21. Next up, select cockpit camera. We need to be able to look around the cockpit. Can't use the mouse as our hand is on the joystick. Ideally for this, you need an axis, which is what I have on this flight stick. If you don't have an axis, you'd have to do it by buttons, look left, right, up, down, etc. But as I have an axis, to look up and down, I'm going to select Cockpit View Pitch Axis, clicking in the box as before, and this time I'm going to press the joystick button upwards to record pitch. And the next one we want is directly above that, Cockpit View Your Axis, and this time I'm going to push the button to the left or right. I'll now be able to freely look around the cockpit. I want to be able to reset my view back to the pilot's position. So staying in the cockpit camera, I'm going to type in reset, and I'm looking for reset cockpit view. Now the joystick on my flight stick also acts as a button, so I'm going to use that, press it down, and that will reset my view. Trying to keep as many of my camera controls in one location as is possible. Selected go back, and now back to the camera, and I'm looking for external camera. And once again, I'm looking for reset external view, and I'm going to use exactly the same button. I can do that, they won't conflict as they're in different camera modes. Now I also want to be able to look around in external view, so let's configure that. And conveniently, as I'm using an axis there right here, I'm looking for external view yaw axes and external view pitch axes. We'll configure the yaw axes first, exactly the same as we did for the cockpit. Move the mini joystick on the flight stick to the left or right, and for pitch axes, move it up and down. I'll now be able to look left and right and up and down. And you'll be relieved to know we're done. Those are all the basic requirements in terms of controls and cameras that you need to fly a helicopter effectively. Let's now go give it a test. It's always a good idea to test your config. Currently external, let's press the button and it takes us to the internal view. Let's now try look around the cockpit. I can look freely around the cockpit, left and right is fine. However, when I move the joystick forward, I'm looking down and vice versa. Well, we'll need to change that. But that's a fairly quick and easy fix. Simply let's head back to the controls, and what I need to do is invert the axis for my look up and down in the cockpit camera. And the quickest way to do that is change the filter to assigned, and I'm looking for cockpit view pitch axis. There it is. I'm going to select the tools icon and then set invert axis. Then when I press the button forward, I'll look up, press it down, I'll look down. It's more intuitive that way. So let's try that again. Look up, yeah, look down, that's better. That's all working now. We can test a few other things. Let's check the cyclic is working as expected, forward, backwards, left and right. That all seems fine. Now we can check the tail rotor, swinging left and right. That's working as expected. Let's now increase the throttle and we should see the collective rise and fall, which is exactly what it's doing. Pressing the button and resetting the view. Perfect. Let's now add a little bit more power so we just get a little bit off the ground. As soon as you lift off the ground, you'll see that you'll start moving. The wind from the rotors is affecting the stability of the helicopter, and this is where trim comes in very handy indeed. Drifting a little bit to the left, so I'll add a little bit of lateral right rotor trim. That's looking fairly stable. Let's go to an external view. And we are sitting fairly stably at the moment. We can test our external view, move our cameras up and down and around. Those are working well. Do you remember we set a button for the CFD? I've just switched that on. Computational fluid dynamics is showing the wind vortexes around the airport and the ground effect. This is amazing. It never gets old as far as I'm concerned. And of course, as it was a toggle function, press the button and it's gone. Let's return to cockpit view. Yes, that's fine. If we look up, we'll be able to see the rotor brake. There it is. Press the button. That's operating as expected. Very good. You obviously wouldn't use this when you're up in the air. And that's it. You're ready to go. You're ready to take to the skies in your helicopter. Despite the most recent patch, there's still a fairly significant bug in the configurator that I think you need to be aware of. That is, if you adjust any sensitivities, it asks you to create a new profile. Hopefully this will get sorted out soon, but what I would recommend is that you set your axes sensitivities, especially if you're new to helicopter flying, and in addition you set the helicopter assists initially, otherwise you can find it very frustrating. To find the assists, head up to the settings menu. From there, choose assistances. And there you'll see the 3 assists available: assisted cyclic, tail rotor and collective. If you're new to helicopter flying, I recommend try all 3 on at first. Anyway, that completes the basic configuration guide for helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you found it useful. It helps me and it helps the channel. Thank you as always, stay well, look after yourself, see you again soon. And ciao for now.